we are going to understand the architecture and the concept of Azure File Sync, which is one of the best resources available for the file servers on premises, or maybe you have on the Azure. Specifically for the on-premises, there are so many things which is actually a roadblock, a setback, a huge maintenance task in on-premises for the file server. But with the help of Azure File Sync, we can take care of all. This is one of the best feature, not so old, but yes, it's a very good feature to know, understand, and implement. Hello everyone, my name is Arun and today we are going to understand Azure File Share and Azure File Sync. In particular, Azure File Sync. Alright, so in today's video what we'll do, we'll try to understand the architecture concept, why we need the benefit of Azure File Sync, and in next video we'll try to perform the demonstration. Alright, cool. So let's quickly go back to the sheet here. You can see before we understand, let's try to figure out why we need this, and if we have Azure File Sync, what task is going to perform for us. Okay, then we'll start understanding File Sync. First we need to know why we need it, what problem it is solving. Okay, all right, so let's go to the on-premises. You can see here, this is the, let's suppose this is an on-premises perimeter, and we have a file server inside that, and there is a huge disk attached to this file server. Okay, now okay, this is the disk attached. Let me make it a little big. Okay, now let's see what all things we need to do in order to maintain the Azure, sorry, not the Azure, but the on-premises file server. First, we need to understand all those things that we do to maintain this file server on premises. The very first thing, you need to take care of the backup. Means you need additional hardware, you need additional planning, you need a team to do your backup and perform all those backup jobs. Okay, so you need an entire department, you need an entire hardware, you need another server, those kind of things. So let me write this down like this: Azure, not the Azure. We'll come to the Azure. It's been a while working on Azure, so it comes out of my mouth quite often. So don't be confused. On premises. That's why I wrote here on premises file server. First thing, backup. Now we also need to plan the DR in case our data center messed up, natural calamity, or any kind of disaster. We need to plan the DR. That means another physical location, another hardware, things like that. A lot of cost involved, right? Then we need to take care of the availability. Right now you can see this is a single server and the huge disk is attached. We all know file server is usually the huge ones because a lot of people are putting their data there. A lot of data is there for the users, so it is always huge in size. So we need to take care of the availability as well. Now, and we all know file server always grows with the exponential growth. So we need to take care of the scalability as well. You need to keep on attaching the disk. All right. What else? Maintenance, because this is the server in your premises, in your hands. So you got your team to maintain everything regarding the updates, patch management, monitoring, those kind of things. Okay, now it seems okay. And there is something called migrations. In case you are already planning to migrate your on-premises machines to the Azure, you need to plan something for the file server as well. Now, the things are like, because we know there are security permissions involved, right? So you need to take care of those things as well during the migration process. So in that situation as well, there are things Azure File Sync can help in all these situations. Okay, so we'll try to understand how come. Now, this is our Azure environment in the cloud, and we have these two services provided by Microsoft, Azure File Share and Azure File Sync, which can help us solving all these things in just a single sync called Azure File Sync. Okay, so if we need to understand what is Azure File Share, so it is in PaaS service for sure. It is in cloud endpoint. You can create up to 100 TBs of share in just a single click. Okay, and you can directly mount this to your VMs, and it provides the SMB. Okay, you can uh, it provides SMB access, so you can mount Azure File Share uh, to the on-premises machines. That and Azure File Sync is a service which enables you to centralize your organization's file share in Azure Files. It means from the back end, it is the file share where you're keeping all the data, which is coming with the help of the sync. The sync is actually the resource which is making this entire service so wonderful. So let's try to understand what we need to do. So this is the very first example. Okay, those things if there is a single server. I have seen those situations as well where you have, oh no, 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 where you have branches. Okay, oh no, 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 come on, don't do that. Where you have branches. So now it's a different branch on premises. Let me write down branch. You could have more than one. So these file servers should be in sync as well. That is another task. Okay, these file servers should be in sync. Only then it will help you in your branching topology that you have. That is another task. You may be using a DFS or things or any other strategy or the technology like that. Okay, now what Azure File Sync will do, it will help you figure out the solution, a single solution for these things. Okay, so if we talk about Azure File Sync, no need for on-premises backup, no hardware, no team, nothing is required. It provides the DR because Azure File Sync is a highly available object managed service for you. You need not to do any kind of maintenance. It is there. Okay, highly available. So this point goes, DR goes, scalability. You can, whenever you want, you can increase the size of your file share. So you need not to buy additional disk and attach to the server initiator, things like that. So it's so simple. Just go there, increase the size. Maintenance. It's a managed service, so no maintenance, no patching, no monitoring. Uh, Monitoring you can do for the health of your server endpoints for sure, but not that kind of monitoring that we do in the on-premises general. Now, in case you're doing the migration with the help of Azure Files, you can easily migrate the file servers. Or if you have the applications which is running with the through the file servers, they have data on the file, so even that can be done here as well. Or you can run the applications on premises and you can move the data to the cloud. That can be done in the hybrid environment. Okay, so and this Azure File Sync is compatible with the AD security permissions. What I mean by that, it's like this is a hybrid environment. You are using your file server, which has the so many files and folders along with the permissions. In backend, you are moving data to the Azure File Sync along with the permissions. And in the front end, you are using with the permissions. So data is going on the back end to the cloud, but permissions would not be hampered because you're not accessing this data from the cloud endpoint, but you're accessing this data from the server endpoint. Okay, so till now we understood why we need the file sync, what problem it is solving, how it is beneficial to us. Now we'll understand how we can establish this. Okay, so if I need to explain Azure File Sync, it will help you to centralize your organization's file share in Azure Files while keeping the flexibility, performance, and compatibility of an on-premises file server in case of hybrid. Okay, if you're moving to the Azure, it will help you out for the migration as well. Okay, and Azure File Sync transforms Windows Server into a quick cache of your Azure file share. We'll understand how uh, in 2 or 3 minutes maybe, when we'll start talking about the architecture, how it actually works. And you can use any protocol that's available on Windows Server to access your data locally, including SMB, NFS, and FTPS. You can have as many cache as you need across the world. Okay, now let's try to understand. Let me make it a little bigger. Right, let's go here. Now let's suppose you have this Azure migration, Azure tenant right here. Let me create two. There is branch 1, there is branch 2. We have file server here. There is one more file server here. We can say file server. We have another file server here. Okay, this is the main office. You can say main office. This is the branch office. Okay, now we need to how we need to establish this Azure File Sync. The things we required from the Azure side, the thing we need on the on-premises side. Now let me tell you this. There is some kind of oh come on, sync going on between these two servers. Only then it could be helpful, because these people want to access the users. The users which are in the branch office want to access all the files from this server. Main office people would access the file from here. Okay, and let me do that. Here are the users. They would like to access the files from here, right? We all know why. Low latency, nearby server, those kind of things. And main office users will do things from here. Come on. Okay. But these servers should be in sync, only then these users would be in the sync. That's the motive, right? So there must be something going on, some kind of technology or something between these two servers for the synchronization. Okay, some kind of sync. So this is a little topology for the on-premises. Now you want to all the things that we talked about here is also happening. All right, so what we can do to utilize the Azure File Sync, we need few things on the Azure. Okay, let me write down right here the prerequisite. Let's say we need storage account so that we can create a file share in the storage account and give it the quota which is required as per our need, or the data that we have in the on-premises, or that we can assume would be more in the near future, maybe like 100 or 1 TB, 2 TB, 10 TB, 15 TBs, as much as we have, or as much as we got the cap. I think 100 TB is the cap. That's a huge data. That's a huge quota. Then we need to create Azure File Sync service. Okay, these two things we need to create on the Azure, and so that these file servers can talk to the Azure File Sync service, we need to deploy an agent here. Okay, in both the let me make it here. We need to deploy an agent here and here. This is an agent, Azure File Sync agent. Let me write this down. Azure File Sync agent. And this agent registers with your Azure subscription, or you can say to your file sync or file share, like this. Register servers. Okay, because both the file server has this agent, while we install this agent, we need to put in the Azure credentials so that we can register these servers to the Azure File Sync service inside the same tenant, subscription, region, okay, to this file sync service. And this would become server endpoints. Okay, these register server, okay, these become server endpoint. It's not like these servers cannot be in Azure. These servers can be in Azure if you want that kind of topology. But that's strange if you want that in the Azure, because you already have Azure File Share. But maybe there are some situations or scenarios where you want to use the Azure server in the front end, in the back end, supported by the file sync. You can do that as well. Now, for now, if you understand, we got a storage account, there's a file share, there's an Azure File Sync service, and these two servers are registered to this service. Okay, Azure File Sync service. Now, how come data will flow and will go to the file share is by something called Cloud Endpoint. This Azure File Sync create a sync group. Sync group would have a cloud endpoint first, and then we can add the server endpoint. Okay. So cloud endpoint is the endpoint of your file share. That file share becomes the cloud endpoint, and so that all the data which this agent will send to the Azure File Sync service would be in the cloud endpoint. Okay, and all the servers which is inside the sync group would have the same data. And we do have something called cloud tiering. There is one more service which make this service absolutely wonderful, is cloud tiering. This, by configuring this cloud tiering, we ask the service always keep, let's suppose, 20% of the disk empty on the branch file server disk, or on this server, on the file server. So that means if your size increases or left less than 20%, all the data would send to the Azure File Sync service automatically, and you would only have the metadata and if somebody needs to use that, it will click and he can use it, but at that point of time the data is not on the disk, only the metadata is on the disk, but it wouldn't take much time. Once you click and open it, it would download instantaneously and you wouldn't find much of a performance issue. It would be almost same. Okay, now there is one more thing that you can do is volume free space. We have another option here, just like cloud tiering, volume free space, and this do the same thing, almost same thing, not exactly the same thing, almost same thing. uh, if you say the amount of free space to reserve on the volume on which the server endpoint is located, for for example, okay, I think I made it a little confusing. Let me explain both the things again. If you enable cloud tiering, infrequently accessed files tiered to the Azure. It is more like your these file server would become a hot cache. Okay, and the files which are not in use, people not using, those files would be moved to the file sync, or you can say those files would not be here. They would, only the metadata would be here, as I said. But the thing I was talking about, the space that we can give under cloud tiering, that only part comes to the volume free space. For example, if we say 50% of the volume would be free on these file server, so whether you enable the tiering or you do not enable the tiering, all the data would move to the Azure file sync. Only the metadata would remain on the file server. One more thing, do not get confused if I'm saying all the data would move to the file sync. By default, all the data, when you establish this file sync, all the data would be in your Azure file share, but it would also be on your branch office's servers or main office servers. But if you enable cloud tiering, the files which are not in use would not be on the branch office. I think that's the right word. Rather than saying move to the Azure sync, let's say will not be on the file server, only the metadata would be on the file server if you enable the cloud tiering. And this particular machines will become the hot cache for your users. The files which are in regular use would remain here. The file which are not in use will move to the, or will not be here, not move to be, because all the data would be there in the file share. The second, volume free space, if you enable this, then whether you have enabled cloud tiering or not, it would be enabled by default, because you want to keep 50% or 20% or 30%, that the amount that you have chosen, you want that free on the file servers. So all that file which are not in use would not be here. It doesn't mean you cannot use it. You can use it because the metadata is here, which will help file server to get the data from the file sync. Okay, that's the whole technology. That's the whole architecture. So when we do it, the demonstration, I'm pretty sure everything would be clear. Okay, and for now, these are the things that Azure File Sync can help us with, and that's how it can help us with. That's how we establish this. What we do, we create a storage account, we create a file share inside it, and inside the file share, we allow the quota, the size of the file share that we need. Then we deploy the Azure File Sync service and register all the file servers to the Azure File Sync service with the help of these agents. And then we'll create the sync group, which is consist of cloud endpoint and server endpoint. Cloud endpoint is the file share endpoint, and server endpoint are the registered servers. And all these things would be in sync, means whatever you have on the branch office, you would have same thing on the main office. And if you want to go vice versa, like you want to put the data directly on the Azure file share, then the sync cycle would take time for sure, because sync from cloud to file server runs once in 24 hours, but from server to server and server to cloud keeps in running. The cycle keeps on going, but that is also possible. Now, let's suppose you have this main office with XYZ data, and this become the server endpoint. These two things are happy and things are working fine. And you add the branch office data, which has some random data already, but you want everything should be in sync. Once you put this server in the sync group, then whatever data this branch office would have and this would have will become one, and everything would be in sync. Okay. So, okay. Now we'll do the demonstration, and while doing the demonstration, I'll talk about a little more on all the features or the components that Azure File Sync service has. This video is getting a little bigger, so thank you for watching. Let's wait for another video for demonstration. Thank you.